This is the Kingscale Gauge 3 gas-fired 14X locomotive. I've done a couple of small modifications on this locomotive. The first one was to replace the gas filler valve. The original ones that came with the loco always seem to let the gas escape back out. These are Aircraft type replacements. I managed to get two of these along with a tool to screw them in on eBay for £10. The other modification I've done is the hand pump in the bunker was over to the left, and every time you operated the handle it struck upon the side of the bunker and did not allow the ram to travel the full distance. So the hand pump has been unbolted and moved to the right further. To achieve this and allow the pipe to the top of the hand pump to fit, there was a tab there which would hold a radio servo in place. That's been folded downwards neatly to allow that pipe, but the hand pump is much more efficient now. Another small modification is the fibre washer on top of the gauge glass was blowing out steam, so that's been replaced by an O-ring. This cap with the slot in for a screwdriver is the feed to the lubricator tank. You can see the tank underneath there. At the end of each run I unscrew that cap and I use a syringe with a fine silicone tube attached to withdraw the water till any remaining oil shows, and then I top that up with fresh steam oil, which I do after the run while the steam oil is still warm and it's easier to get the water out while everything's nice and warm. This is the bypass valve, and when it's closed firmly home, that's when it's pumping water in. On the right hand side of the loco is the water tank, which I fill with a syringe. You could use a small funnel, but when you use a syringe you can get used to putting a measured amount in and being familiar with how much water the tank takes. To fill it completely up takes about 120 mils. The gas tank is on the left hand side. The fillers actually work quite well with the small cigarette lighter type gas canisters which you can get from the pound shop. If you want a little more economy or volume, these large cans of butane can be utilised if you buy an adapter. This is a neat little Primus adapter which I got from Amazon and also available from eBay. Roundhouse and other places like Chuff to Bits also do one which is a larger one made of brass. You turn the filler onto the valve and gently push down and you can hear the gas going inside. I had left my gas valve open then from the previous run. So I'm now putting some gas into the tank. As the gas is going in you can hear the air venting out and the occasional whisper of gas leaking out. When it's full to the top you get gas liquid squirting out and you know it's full to the top. I tend not to fill it completely to the top getting used to know how much to put in. This is because sometimes the gas tanks may have impurities in, and filling it to the top might carry the impurities over with the liquid and block your gas jets. So it's only a small locomotive and it seems to run for about 15 minutes to half an hour, and you get familiar with how much gas you put in and how long a run you're going to get from that amount of gas. When you've got your water in your tanks, it's always best to have your bypass valve open when you start to pump the water to get rid of any air leaks in the system. So I'm pumping it now with the bypass open, and then if I close the bypass I can feel the resistance on the pump now, and you can hear the squeak there as the water passes through the clank valve into the boiler. Inside the cab there's a reversing lever which you can get to by putting your hand through the top or the side, and it's just got forwards, reverse and mid gear. You can also see at the bottom there where the burner jet goes into the housing. The Kingscale instructions show you how to take the body off if you wish to clean that burner jet out. But if you're very careful, you can see the nut there, the union nut, underneath the body of the gas burner. And if you're very careful with a spanner and take your time, you can undo that nut and withdraw that pipe and the burner from underneath. It's quite fiddly to get it back in place. You do need to put some blue tack or masking tape to hold the nut near the top when you put it back together. But if you take your time, you can remove the burner, because sometimes the impurities get in the burner jet and stop it working, which is quite frequent on these Chinese models. The regulator valve is a manual one, and it's just inside the cab there, so prior to steaming now, just ensuring that it's closed. The gas valve's currently closed, and I have about a third of a glass of water in the gauge. Lighting the loco can prove quite temperamental. Turn the gas on till I can just hear it, and then try lighting it at the chimney. That was a successful light first time. I can now hear it roaring back inside. The instructions say to light it through the smoke box door. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes if the gas tank has been filled completely and you have liquid gas, you have a flame roaring from the chimney. Sometimes when you light the loco, the flame comes through the chimney anyway, and the thing to do is turn the gas to almost off, or quickly turn it off and then back on again, and you'll hear it pop and return to burning correctly. Once your fire's lit correctly, you'll see it glowing red through the glass door on the firebox. You can then turn your gas up or down to suit your requirements. Generally when it's open, you can't turn it much more open to get a higher flame. There's a maximum level. You can turn it down though and just have the loco simmering, which is useful. The more gas you get in the tank, the more of a roar and quicker you can get steam up. The locos are designed to operate at 75 psi, so when you're raising steam, initially you need to check your pressure gauge and take note of what pressure the safety valves lift. if you put a little drop of oil on the top of the safety valve, those two holes there, you can get a tool such as a very thin pair of pliers or a circlip tool, and you can screw the safety valve up or down until you get it lifting at bang on 75 psi, the operating pressure. The loco's coming up to pressure now, but as I'm taking you through operations, I'm just going to turn the gas down slightly and just explain about clearing the cylinders. All too often I see people opening the regulator and expecting it to set off, or if they do, they have to open it so far to make it move that it goes too fast. When it's been stood even for a short while, you need to clear the condensate from the cylinders. What I tend to do is move it backwards and forwards in with the regulator open slightly till the condensate clears from the chimney. But I would estimate you've got to do this for at least 50 yards to be successful. So I've now put the loco in reverse and I'm just opening the regulator slightly, and I'll just push her along to start to clear the cylinders. You can hear the water gurgling and squirting up through the chimney, and there it's ejecting the water from the cylinders from the chimney. My track is 7'9" radius, so you can estimate roughly how far I'm pushing it, and I'll do the same now. I'm moving it into forwards. I've left the regulator open slightly. Now, because the condensate's clear and the regulator's open, I can now feel the loco starting to move on its own, which means the cylinders are now clear. So before you try and do any running of the loco freely, that's the best method to employ. So currently the bypass is open, the loco's in forward gear, I've cleared the cylinders, I'm just opening the regulator gently and let it find its own way off. And to slow the loco, I reach hold of the cab and retard its movement and gently close the regulator. So it's done in a lap now. I've got some water in the tanks now. The loco has done a lap with the bypass open. It's now been closed. Just going to set it off gently. It's always good to let them find their own pace and go gentle. And if they flip like they're going to carry away too fast, just retard it a little bit and then try again. This small track's quite challenging for a loco, and it finds the high points where it's just about to stop. But after a while you'll get familiar with setting regulator just to the correct position to go at a nice steady pace and crest them hills. And if it does come to a stop, sometimes it might set off on its own, sometimes you might just have to give it a little bit of assistance, but always better, I find, to go nice and slowly and stop for a blow up than going too fast. In this case the fire's gone out because I only put a limited amount of gas in when I started this demonstration. So I'll turn the gas valve off, I'll replenish the gas, close the regulator, and then when I've done that I'll show you some footage of it running round. I'll just give you a quick demonstration of the underside of the loco. I did run out of gas, so I couldn't continue showing you any running. This is the whistle, which I don't bother with at all. That's the burner jet, and that's the housing for the burner with the air holes in. You could move that in and out slightly, it's just held in by pressure to assist burning qualities. This is your bypass valve, and there's a control lever. When it's unscrewed it goes back up that rubber pipe and into the tank. This is the bottom of the lubricating oil sump. There is a screw on there, but obviously you can only get to it when the loco's upside down, and if you took it out to empty the tank you'd lose some oil on your frames etc. while turning it over, so that's more for a total clean out on an overhaul rather than regular emptying. I use a syringe. So you can see all your eccentrics down there, they're all well oiled up. This is the top of the axle pump. Well, it's not an axle pump actually, it's a crosshead pump. These are your piston valves going into the steam chest, and the cylinders are below or above when the loco's the right way up. Two slide bars down there, get plenty of oil in there. Make sure you oil down for the actual axle journals as well, inside and outside the frames. Make sure you oil your crank pins too. There are some bolts which you can use to remove the bodywork, but I've never done that, as some of them, as this one here, the vacuum pipe is obscuring it. I don't want to damage that vacuum pipe. You could possibly get it off, but I think it would be a real swine to get back on. Just visible there is the bottom of the hand pump and the rubber pipe which takes water from the side tank to the hand pump. All the water system from the crosshead pump and the hand pump all goes via the hand pump. Some people complain about the water capacity on these 14Xs. What you could do is remove that rubber pipe off that spigot there and put another rubber pipe on, go into a tank wagon or an open wagon with a container in behind your locomotive, and you would be able to carry sufficient water then to match the duration of the gas tank. Usually for every filling of gas you might fill the water tank on the loco about 2.5 times. You could even put a T in that rubber pipe and have both the water tank on the locomotive and on the wagon. The only problem with doing that would be that the water level on the wagon would only be able to be as high as the top of the tanks on the loco, so you need quite a low slung tank on your wagon. Whereas if you take that rubber pipe off totally, the amount of water you put on your wagon will be totally independent of the loco, and you can have a real volume of water on there. So that's it, that's the Kingscale 14X. It's been out now about 5 or 6 years. It's a real sweet look. It's a very good loco for transportation to get together with it being so small. wooden box for this, which is slightly longer than the loco. I will line that out with foam at some point. And I always like to try and hold the loco with the buffers. I'll just try and demonstrate. I'm just picking the loco up now with my finger and thumb round the buffer shanks. Put that onto the towel on the box. Gently lower it in. I've got enough space either side when I want to get that loco out of the box to be able to get my hands in, pick it up with the buffers without touching any of the plate work and risking damaging any handrails and anything. So just to demonstrate now, at the end of the run I have a syringe with a very small silicone tube on the end, and I also have a screwdriver with a suitably large blade to fit this cap on the lubricator. Don't be tempted to use a small screwdriver, because some might say the brass from China is not as good as the English stuff, and you're very likely to chovel that slot. So I've not really run this too much, but the principle is put this into there and withdraw water off the top. There's not much water coming out there because that wasn't a very long run, but you can see that's water coming into the syringe there, and I'll just deposit that on my grass, and then I'll do the same again. Just get rid of the water off the top. And when you've cleared the water, you can either use a syringe to put some oil back in, or I tip the loco on its side and I pour the steam oil directly into there from the spout of the steam oil can, not filling it up too much. I won't do that now because I can't do all three things at the same time. Plus I know there's still oil in there from a previous run. Another good thing of putting oil in with a syringe and removing the water and also the remaining oil with the syringes, you get familiar with how much oil you're using for the duration of your run, and you'll get to a point after a while when you'll start to appreciate for every gassing how much water you're going to use, how much oil you're putting in the lubricator, and how much oil you're going to replenish. When you've finished your run, it's always wise to just open the gas valve a little bit and also open the regulator a little bit, just that while it's in store any vacuum present when the boiler cooling down doesn't cause the regulator to seize up. I mentioned lighting the gas via the smoke box door. It's actually held shut by a little clip, and you can just open the door with your fingernail. I prefer to use the chimney for lighting purely because I don't want that clip which is sprung to get worn over time. As you look inside, you can see there's one large flue tube and two smaller ones. This block at the front is the header for the cylinders. The chimney is held onto the top of the smoke box by a large knurled nut. Before I do put the loco away, it's covered in oil and emulsion from the steam oil on the boiler. Some people like to leave it like that, but I always like to give it a clean. I just get some WD-40, squirt it onto an old rag and then clean the surfaces with a WD-40. This helps to clean the residual steam oil off the paintwork. It keeps it looking nice and also helps repel water, so if the next time you're having a running session it starts to rain, you won't have to panic too much. There are some really highly detailed parts on these 14Xs, like these toolboxes and the actuating gear for what would be the auto tank equipment, as well as these tiny lamp brackets. If you really want to go to town and do a thorough cleaning every so often, I recommend using a cotton bud with some WD-40 on. Similarly here, there's these rings which we use for lifting the tank away from the loco when it was in the works, and these little vents, can't really get all that totally clean just with a rag in your fingers, so cotton buds do come in very handy for that type of thing. But generally after you run, if you give it a nice wipe over, if it's got oil in the lubricator, then when you come to play again, all you're going to need to do is fill your tanks with water, put your gas in, and then you're ready to roll. So there you have it, that's a Kingscale 14XX 042 auto tank in BR black livery. If you want to see more Gauge 3 locomotives in action, please look at my YouTube channel, Bottom 100. Thank you for